Here is our official introduction to the Skarloey Railway, folks. 4 Little Engines, the 5th episode of the 4th series based on the stories Skarloey Remembers and Old Faithful from the Railway series, book of the same name. As I said, this episode introduces us to the Skarloey Railway as well as the main engines of the railway. High in the hills of Sodor, there is a narrow gauge railway that runs alongside a lake by the woods and a picturesque waterfall. The railway is run by 4 little engines named Skarloey, Rheneas, Sir Handel and Peter Sam. Skarloey and Rheneas have run the line for many years and know everyone who visits them. Sir Handel and Peter Sam, who used to be named Stuart and Falcon respectively, are relatively new to the railway. One morning, Edward is sent to the works to be mended by the Fat Controller. As he approaches the works, he spots Skarloey, who is resting in his own open side shed. Skarloey tells Edward that he was put there so he could see everyone and not feel lonely. He then reveals that Rheneas has been sent to the works to be mended and admits that not only does he miss his friend, but he wishes he could be mended too. Soon, some workmen come to take Edward, who says goodbye to Skarloey and compliments his railway, which cheers the old engine up. Meanwhile, Sir Handel is having trouble. He is trying to be kind to some coaches he is pulling, but they refuse to trust him and become awkward and rude. When he has to stop due to a flock of careless sheep straying onto the tracks, the coaches angrily think that he deliberately bumped them. So they charge at Sir Handel and cause him to derail. No one is hurt, but Sir Handel sadly limps home. With no engine to take the passengers home, Skarloey volunteers to pull the coaches. When Skarloey arrives at Crovan's gate, he reprimands the coaches for their bad behaviour. The coaches apologise, and as soon as the guard blows his whistle, their journey begins. Skarloey stops at every station making good time until they get to a steep hill. His driver encourages him to take it easy, while Skarloey thinks it will be easier when they go downhill, but it is not. His springs have become weak due to his old age, and the rail joints jar his wheels. As they are coming down the hill, one of his springs completely breaks, leaving him tilted to one side. His driver says a bus will be needed to take the passengers, but Skarloey refuses any such notion, and is determined to get them back to Crovan's gate. Later, James is waiting impatiently at Crovan's gate. Skarloey limps slowly into the station, and James collects his passengers and takes them home, remaining respectfully silent. Everyone is pleased with Skarloey, but he worriedly laments on how he is in no state to pull trains anymore like young engines. However, he is delighted when his driver tells him that he will be able to once he is mended and that he deserves it. Not only is this episode our introduction to the Skarloey Railway, but it's also our introduction to the 2 main engines that run the line, Skarloey and Rheneas. Skarloey is the sage of the Skarloey Railway and is an old, faithful little engine. He is a calm-natured, quaint and mature engine and may often try to guide or watch other less experienced narrow gauge engines in his firm but fair and friendly manner. Skarloey acts kindly to engines and passengers alike and always enjoys a gentle, smooth journey through the woods by the lakeside and stopping at all the gates and stars he remembers so well. Skarloey is based off of the Talaclyn Railway's Talaclyn, a Fletcher Jennings class CO42ST built in 1864. In the Railway series, Talaclyn is his twin. And the episode does a great job at showing off Skarloey's personality, showing how old and wise he is, and how dedicated he is to getting his passengers home on time. Then there's his friend Rheneas, who has been called a gallant little engine before and deserves the title. He is highly determined, brave and courageous. Rheneas is a tough, committed worker despite his age and takes great responsibility in his work. He is keen to keep his friends smiling, and although he is a level-headed engine, he can be a bit of an adventurer too. Though he may often try to struggle on alone, Rheneas knows when it is time to call for help on his friends. Nevertheless, Rheneas is always highly dedicated to the task at hand. He is based on the Talaclyn Railway's Dolgoch, and I'm sure I'd butcher that name again, the same class that Smudger was based off of. In the Railway series, Dolgoch is Rheneas' twin. The most unfortunate thing about this episode is the fact that we don't get to see a lot of Rheneas' personality, but we will get to see it later on in the series. The first part of this episode takes place before a bad day for Sir Handel, and the second part takes place after Peter Sam and the Refreshment Lady, despite being produced and subsequently aired before one of the next 2 episodes. And there's a bit of a callback to the second series episode Old Iron, when Edward is being sent to the works to be mended by the Fat Controller. Now this was intentionally what happened in the Railway series, since the book this story was based on actually takes place after the events of Old Iron. And I enjoyed the interaction between Edward and Skarloey in this episode, showing that the two have known each other for a very long time. Since they're 2 of the oldest engines on the railway, it would make sense that they're very friendly acquainted with each other. And it's a shame we never got to see these 2 interact more often after this episode. But this really was a great way to show their relationship. And the visual of Skarloey being slanted on one side is just an amazing visual. It's just so iconic. I can't begin to imagine how hard it must have been for the model makers to make this scene possible. And it's another one of those episodes that's based off of 2 stories from the Railway series rather than just one, combining 2 stories into one, using Skarloey Remembers but leaving out the flashbacks of Skarloey and Rheneas working together, and mainly focusing on him and Edward's conversation, and focusing on all of the details from Old Faithful. And I think they did a pretty good job at combining the 2 stories. And as we all know, this isn't the first time they put 2 stories into one episode for the TV series. It's been done multiple times in the past, and this is another great example of how it's done right. This is also the first time that the coaches of the Sodor Railway have done something bad to one of the engines, that being forcing Sir Handel off the rails after bumping them accidentally while stopping to avoid crashing into sheep. And it's normally troublesome trucks that force engines off the rails, but this is the first time we see coaches do it. And the reason why they do it to him makes sense in the next episode, since as I said, this episode aired before that episode when it was meant to take place sometime after that episode. But I'll get to that in the next review. And like with the last 4 episodes, the sceneries are just so gorgeous. Just seeing all those mountains, lakesides and waterfalls is just such a gorgeous sight. It's one of the most visually stunning episodes of the TV series, in my opinion. 4 Little Engines is a delightful episode that introduces us to the Skarloey Railway and Skarloey and Rheneas, showing how determined they are to get the job done. It's an episode that I do highly recommend for anyone that watches the TV series and hasn't seen this episode for a long time, but I would advise you to watch it after the next 2 episodes I'm going to review. But despite it airing in the Von order, it really is a wonderful episode that I do recommend checking out.